In today's video, we're going to be going over a little bit of what a hash function is and how hash functions relate to Bitcoin mining and the Bitcoin blockchain. So I'm just going to quickly go over what a hash function is. So pretty much a function is a computation. These computations have an input and an output. You give something to the function and it gives you an output. So hashing is generating a value or values from a string of text or number using a mathematical function. And hashing is one way to enable security during the process of message transmission when the message is intended for a particular recipient. A formula generates a hash, which helps to protect the security of the transmission against tampering. So I said before, it is for security, pretty much. And I'm not going to go into huge detail of what hashing is. I'll leave a article in the description from Block Geeks to help you fully understand hashing if you're interested in that. I'm just going to kind of go over how hashing is used in Bitcoin's blockchain and the mining principle of it. So let's go ahead and jump into that. So the thing is, hash functions are deeply involved in the Bitcoin blockchain and mining. The hash is like the unique fingerprint of data. So each block has a hash. The hash of the block is based on transactions in the block and also based on the hash of the previous block. So that means the unique fingerprint of the block is based on the previous hash and the transactions of the current block. So if you try to change a transaction then the hash will be completely different. Or if anything in the last block is changed, it will also change the hash of the previous block and the current block. This is why it's pretty much impossible to break the rules with Bitcoin. This is not the whole story on how blocks get the hash, so we're going to introduce mining into the equation here soon. So miners will all be computing to solve a cryptographic puzzle, and they compete against each other. The cool thing about this puzzle is that it's based on the contents of the previous blocks, like I said before. When a miner solves a puzzle and their block is accepted, all other miners' blocks are dropped. If someone tried to remove a transaction from a previous block, then the links to the blocks will be broken. The puzzles that miners are trying to solve are very particular to the exact state of the previous blocks. So if you change something in a block, then all connections to the block will be broken and all nodes will know that the contents of the block are false. The difficulty of the puzzle is proportionate to the hash rate. The network always chooses the longest chain, which makes it pretty much impossible to change anything in any of the blocks. You would need 51% of the hash rate of the entire network to do so. Now we are going to go over some of the math behind proof of work. So the way the blocks are linked together is that each block has a hash, which is a digital fingerprint of the block. The hash of the block is based on all transactions of the block and the hash of the previous block. I know I've said this multiple times, but trying to just get that through to everybody because that's important to understand. The unique fingerprint of the block is based on all the transactions in the block and the previous block. Alright? So this means if you were to change a transaction in the block, then the hash would change. If anything in the previous block was changed, then it means that both hashes would change. I know I already said that too, but it does get a little confusing. The hash is based on the previous hash and transactions in the current block, and also based on a random number that miners have defined called nonce. So this is when we introduce the miners to the equation. So it's based off the transactions of the current block, the hash of the previous block, and nonce, which is a random number that miners try to figure out. So if you are a miner, you take the hash of the previous block, the transactions in the current block, and then you guess a number called nonce. The nonce, when hashed together with the previous hash and the current block transaction, needs to make a hash less than the target number. Miners have the list of transactions and hash of previous block, and then they guess the nonce over and over and over again and they keep hashing them all together to try to get a hash that is less than the target number. The target number depends on the hash rate or difficulty of the Bitcoin network. The more people that are mining, the lower the target number will be. So the higher the difficulty, the lower the target number will be. The harder it will be for the miner to guess the nonce. The hash of the block must be less than the target number to be accepted. This is the puzzle that miners compete to find the solution to. The only thing they are doing is guessing the nonce. So when you hash the nonce together with the previous hash and the transactions of the current block, you get a hash for the block that is lower than the target number. Now I will go over a little bit more about what the target actually is. The target gets lower as the mining difficulty increases. When more miners come online, the difficulty increases, and the target number lowers. That means more electricity is required to find the number that is lower than the target number. There is no way of predicting what hash will be before hashing it. So in reality, it is much smarter to work by the rules of Bitcoin blockchain and try to find the correct nonce when hashed together with the transactions of the current block and the hash of the previous block give you a hash that is below the target number. If you're trying to do something fraudulent, you're wasting money, you're wasting hardware, you're wasting electricity, you're wasting time, and you will not solve anything. You get no reward. The Bitcoin network will not accept fraudulent blocks, transactions, or hashes. Next, I'm going to go over a little bit more detail to help you understand how this all works. I'm going to use some graphics that I drew up. So we're going to go ahead and go to that next. Alrighty, here we are on a little graphic I drew up. This is just to help you understand the whole process. Okay, so here's the first block in the blockchain or whatever. Let's just say this is the one the miners are currently working on. So to make the hash for this block right here, to get the hash, they need to hash together the transactions in the block with the hash of the previous block and the nonce. Nonce is just a random number that miners keep guessing over and over again. Now when they hash these three things together, they need to get a target number or a number lower than the target number. So they'll just keep guessing the nonce and hashing it together with the transactions and the previous hash until they get a target or a number that is lower than the target number. So I drew this little scale. Let's just say from infinity to 0, and the target number's right here. So if when they guess the nonce and hash it together, they get something that's up here, not be accepted. If they get something up here, not be accepted. It has to be below the target number. So if they guess down here, if the hash is lower than this target number and it's down here, then the block will be added to the blockchain. And like I said before, the target number depends on the difficulty. The higher the difficulty, the lower the target number. So miners will just keep guessing the nonce over and over and over again until when hashed with the transactions of the block and the hash of the last block make a current hash that is less than the target number. So I hope this kind of helps you understand how hashes are used and how a hash is generated for a block. And all blocks are connected this way. So when you go to the block before this block, it's the exact same. The hash of this block right here, you get it from the transactions of the current block and the hash of the previous block and the nonce, which is the random number that all miners are competing to guess. And it's the same thing each time. They have to keep guessing it until they get one hash that is lower than the target number. And this is on a scale of infinity to 0. So I mean, it gets much, much, much harder to guess that target number as it comes closer and closer and closer and closer to 0 as the difficulty increases. I hope that helps you understand it. And pretty much, if one transaction is changed in this previous block here, then it would completely change the hash, and thus it would not be accepted. The only way that you could get it to be accepted is if you had 51% of the entire network's mining ability behind you. And the thing is, if you did not, it'd be impossible, because you would change it to this block, but the actual real blockchain with the current hash rate would already be producing more blocks and adding them on to the real chain, while you're stuck trying to change one transaction in the previous block and spending tons of resources and not being able to do so. Just to put it in perspective, even if you had, let's just say you had 50 full mining farms running constantly trying to do that, it'd take you probably a few years just to do that one block, and by that time, every 10 minutes a new block is added. So you'd be getting farther and farther and farther behind. You'd never be able to get your fraudulent chain into the real blockchain, because the Bitcoin network always goes with the longest chain, and you would not be able to do that without getting over 50% of the entire network's processing power. So that's what makes the Bitcoin network so secure. And I mean, if you're just using Bitcoin, you don't really need to understand these aspects of it, but I find that it is pretty beneficial to understand exactly how it works, because it just makes you feel that much safer when you're utilizing it. If you don't understand how Bitcoin works and you're just getting into it, and you just think, well, it's just some type of internet money, and I mean, what makes it so secure? What makes it where you cannot double spend a transaction? What makes it where you cannot copy Bitcoin? What makes it secure? I mean, all the processing power behind it, the hardware, the hashing, I mean, the hash of each block, I mean, the way it is done, where you take the transactions in the current block, hash them together, pretty much with the hash of the previous block, and the nonce that the miners are constantly guessing, and when those three things are hashed together, they have to be lower than the target number. So it's pretty much stupid to try to go against the network, as you could spend millions and millions of dollars and you'd get absolutely nothing from it. Whereas if you put that millions and millions of dollars to work actually helping the network, you're going to get some worth out of it. You're going to help produce new blocks. You're going to get block reward. You can join a mining pool. So you're going to get rewarded for that. So there's really no incentive for someone to try to do something fraudulent on the Bitcoin network. And I mean, even most countries, it'd just be ridiculous. They would not have enough resources to do a 51% attack on Bitcoin. And I mean, it'd be pointless for them to even try. So again, I hope this kind of helps you understand. I know I went over and over again the same thing with the blocks. How the hash of the current block is made from the transactions of the block and the hash of the previous block, as well as the nonce, which is generated by the miners. And the nonce is just completely random numbers generated by the miners. And it needs to be hashed together with the transactions of the current block and the hash of the previous block. And if you want to understand exactly what hashing is, like I said at the start of the video, I'm going to put a very, very good article in the description below. It's from Block Geeks. It's a little long, but it'll really help you more understand what hashing is. I just wanted to kind of go over how it pertains to the Bitcoin network and mining, but that article goes over in detail the characteristics of hashing, what makes hashing so important, and everything pretty much you need to know about hashing. And that will be in the description. I'd like to thank everyone who's been watching my videos. It really means a lot to me. I'm trying to get Bitcoin out to the world, and my channel's really for people that are just getting started. But I am going to be going into much more advanced things too. Once I fully go over everything about Bitcoin, I'll be going over Ethereum. I'll be going over some altcoins. I'll be going over EOS. I'll be going over decentralized finance, or DeFi, which is the craze right now. I'll be going over stable coins. I'll be going over oracles like Chainlink. I mean, there's just so much to it, but I think it is best for everyone to understand Bitcoin first before they start messing with all these other ones, because Bitcoin is the very first cryptocurrency. It's the most, well, not the very first, but the very first successful cryptocurrency that has solved the double spend problem, that has solved the security issues. It is by far the safest. It is the most secure. So I'm going to end the video there. And again, I'd like to thank everybody that's taken the time to watch my videos. I will be doing giveaways again in the near future. And thank you. Everyone have a great rest of your day.